Good afternoon to all of you. Let me welcome the Honorable Director of AIIMS Bhubaneswar, Dr. Geetanjali, the Dean, Dr. Hota, Dr. Mohanty, Medical Superintendent, Deputy Director Administration, Mr. P.K. Rai, faculty, and dear colleagues. As we know that India has faced 2 waves of COVID, and there are reports from national and international agencies about a 3rd wave which is expected. So this webinar discusses the preparedness of AIIMS Bhubaneswar for the 3rd wave. It also provides an opportunity for the public to discuss the issues with the experts available here. I would like to give a brief outline before we proceed with the various speakers. We have actually, before we talk about this 3rd wave, what was our statistics during the 1st and the 2nd wave? As we can see, the COVID admissions in the 1st wave from April to December, it peaked at 524 in September 2020. And during this time, the non-COVID admissions were also there, but that had come down substantially during this September 2020. The deaths were peaking at in July 2020. Whereas if you look at the 2nd wave, the maximum number of patients were in June 21 at 956. And there were 993 discharges also on the same time. The deaths also peaked at 192 in June 21. Looking at the screening OPD, the COVID OPD admissions, consultations were maximum in September at 5,521, whereas the trauma emergency recorded the highest number in August, that is 3,137. In the 2nd wave, the numbers actually are a little higher in the screening OPD at 6,724, peaked in May 21, and the numbers in the trauma emergency were high in March 21. When you looked at the statistics, the number of patients getting admitted were double at the peak hours in the 2nd wave compared to the 1st wave. The testing, we will discuss this in detail in the coming talks, so I'll just skip this slide. Looking at the various infrastructure that has been created for the COVID management at AIIMS Bhubaneswar. On the left upper hand corner, there is a ICU which is dedicated in a separate building, 20-bedded ICU for COVID patients. Just opposite to that, we have a full block, that is separate block of 150 beds for COVID patients. On the right-hand side of the ward block, there is a trauma emergency where the screening happens, and also there is a suspect ICU for 16 beds. And these are all directly accessible through road for the public. And we have also a dedicated screening OPD near the main gate. So the split up of 311 beds, which were already earmarked for the COVID management, the suspect wards, there were 92 beds during the 2nd wave, and the critical care areas, ICUs and the HDUs, together 53 beds with all support of the ventilators, and COVID wards in various blocks were also there. In addition, we have a dedicated labor room and an operation theater for the COVID management. And there is a separate admission desk for the positive patients. For the mucormycosis patients, there were separate beds for about 70 in ENT and ophthalmology wards. The various facilities like central donning facility, the various trained manpower for the management, separate transport team, a COVID vaccination center, COVID helpline, 24 hours for all the public. The data is also uploaded in the website. There is again a 24/7 administrative control room where all the administrative matters are addressed. And we have put in place all the protocols and the SOPs for management. And there is an infection control team dedicated for supervising the infection control activities. Both the waves, we have actually surpassed 1.2 lakhs teleconsultations with our Swasthya app and the WhatsApp calling facility. There are signages put in place, and there are separate arrangements for the biomedical waste management and for the supplies of various consumables for COVID management. We also have a dedicated MGPS liquid oxygen plant with sufficient backup for managing any eventuality. And the other support services like radio diagnosis, laboratory facilities are also available. Today we have speakers for discussing on the pulmonary medicine part dealing with the clinical management. We have another faculty speaking on the emergency services, the preparedness in the ICUs, labor room services, pediatric services, the OPD screening facilities, vaccination services, testing services, and the preparedness for equipment, consumables, and drugs, and the nursing services. So I invite each of them one by one to present. Thank you very much. And we have a session on, at the end of this talks, we have a brief 15-20 minutes for question answers. Thank you very much.
Very good afternoon to all of you, respected Director Madam, and my dear colleagues. So my job is to take you through the changing clinical paradigm in just 5 minutes. It's a very tough job. I will try my best to complete within 5 minutes. Over last 1.5 years, we all have witnessed the two peaks of the pandemic, and now there are a lot of speculations and discussions regarding the third wave, the inevitable third wave, which is going to come. So this paper has been recently published in the Indian Journal of Medical Research, where the behavior of the possible third wave has been shown. This has been taken into account, assuming the worst, that is if the R0 is 3, that is if the R0 of the second wave, where there was an explosion of cases, was around 2. So if we assume the R0 to be 3, And also, if the new variant is expected to escape the pre-existing immune response of around 25% of people, then the behavior of the third wave is supposed to be as shown by this blue curve. So, but if we mix the worst with the best, that is, if we are able to we cover the vaccination of around 40% of the population within the next 3 months from the end of the second wave, then the behavior of the third wave is going to be as shown by the red line. So anyway, this is predicted to be much less severe than the second wave, which is a very that's a very good news at least. Now coming to the changing clinical profile, so this again is the publication from the ICMR recently in the Indian Journal of Medical Research from the ongoing Indian registry on COVID patients. So AIIMS Bhubaneswar is also a part of this ongoing nationwide registry of COVID patients. So comparing when the demographic and the clinical characteristics of patients of both the waves were compared, so it was found that the mean age of the COVID patients in the second wave has reduced by around 2 years. So as on analyzing further based upon the different age groups, it was found that except for elderly persons above 60 years of age, rest all the age groups, the proportion of patients affected were significantly more than that of the first wave. Only the elderly person age group, the proportion of patients affected were less than that of the first wave. Also, one significant observation was that as compared to the first wave, where the elderly population with significant comorbid conditions were more affected, here during the second wave, the persons with no comorbidity were affected more. And also the duration from the onset of symptoms to admission, that also decreased as compared to the first wave, which indicates perhaps that a rapid progression of the disease process. Also, another notable feature in the comparison was that the proportion of asymptomatic patients were significantly higher than that of the first wave. Now, when the presenting complaints were compared between the two waves, fever was the persistent significant complaint that persisted throughout the two waves, and only the shortness of breath and headache were more in the second wave. Rest all other common symptoms like dry cough, fatigue, sore throat, loss of taste, loss of smell, they all were found to be less in the second wave as compared to the first wave. Now, coming to the complications and outcome among the COVID patients in the two waves, patients progressing to ARDS, patients with hyperglycemia and septic shock, these three complications were more significantly more in the second wave as compared to the first wave. Now, coming to the deaths, the proportion of deaths were also significantly higher in the second wave as compared to the first wave, and when this increase in the death rates were also found in other countries like Germany and Japan, and whereas countries like Iran, South Korea, they have reported less number of deaths in the second wave. And also, when the deaths were analyzed as per the age groups, it was found that except in the age group less than 20 years of age, rest all other age groups, the death rates were higher in the second wave. Now, coming to the parameters of healthcare system utilization, so it was found that the proportion of patients requiring supplemental oxygen was significantly higher in the second wave as compared to the first wave. And among those patients requiring supplemental oxygen, those landing up in the ICU, in the mechanical ventilation, was again significantly higher. And also the duration of hospital stay of those patients who had died in the hospital was also more. Now, coming to the treatment part, as compared to the first wave and the second wave, in the first wave, there were there was random use of hydroxychloroquine, vitamin C, D, zinc, and also the remdesivir was started using as an experimental antiviral drug. But as more and more robust evidences came in from large clinical trials, the use of hydroxychloroquine and these micronutrients were all stopped. And now new evidence in favor of inhalation budesonide was well available, and this was used in the early mild cases to prevent the progression to more severe cases. And systemic corticosteroid was used in both the waves in similar proportion, around 53% of cases. But the only difference was that in the first wave, the methylprednisolone was mostly used, whereas it shifted to dexamethasone during the second wave. Tocilizumab was used more or less in similar percentage of cases, around 6% in both the waves. Convalescent plasma, which was used during the first wave, was discontinued because of lack of evidence in favor of convalescent plasma. So summarizing my observations, we have seen that there is a trend towards more involvement of the younger demography, and this underlines the urgency of introducing vaccination for this group of population. Also, the elderly population more than 60 years of age still remain the most vulnerable group, the most high-risk group. And the symptomatology has remained focused primarily on the respiratory system with increased proportion of breathlessness. More and more persons are coming with breathlessness, and they are requiring supplemental oxygen. And higher utilization of healthcare system has underlined the need for meticulous pandemic preparedness for future surges. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody, respected Director Madam and all faculties and other delegates present in the webinar. Today, I am going to speak on the topic of what we are expecting in the third COVID wave. So this is a very intriguing to expect, because not much data or evidence is available as of now that what the third wave will look like. So I will try to touch upon this, basically these 4 points, like when the third wave will come. The second is what will be the case load, and third, how the third COVID wave may affect children, and will the Delta plus variant be the driver of the COVID third wave. And the recent on research by IIT Hyderabad and Kanpur in August of last week that predicted a third wave would peak in October 2021. The upward curve would be seen in August, and the best case scenario would consist of India seeing 1 lakh infections per day, and in worst case scenario, 1.5 lakh maximum per day. And this wave would be comparatively smaller than the second wave, which saw a record of over 4 lakhs cases in a day on 7th of May 2021. And just 2 days back, the latest updates from National Institute of Disaster Management under the Ministry of Home Affairs has warned of a third COVID-19 wave, which will peak in October in its recent report to the Prime Minister's office.
Sound band
So the question is, how many daily COVID-19 cases can be expected in third wave? According to the recent study done by professors and alumni from Pandit Deen Dayal Energy University, the vaccination rate of India is currently very less, and it stated that if the vaccination rate doesn't improve, India can witness 6 lakh cases per day in the next third wave. Will the vaccination help? If the government's proposal to increase this rate by 5 times, that is 1 crore doses of vaccines per day, comes to happen, then India will see only 25% of the cases seen in the second wave during the third wave peak. That is roughly at 1 lakh per day. Hence, the vaccination is the only way out of this pandemic, the report said. How the third COVID-19 wave may affect children? According to the report, there is no direct evidence that proves children in India will be more affected in the anticipated third wave. The report, however, suggests that children remains a cause of concern since they are still not vaccinated. Many health experts had initially raised concerns about the possibility of a third wave affecting children more adversely than adults. However, the recent scientific evidence data suggests otherwise. The Indian Academy of Pediatrics found that there is no biological evidence that current and the new Delta Plus variant will affect children more disproportionately than adults. Will the Delta Plus variant be the driver of third COVID wave? In its report, the panel stated that there was no direct evidence to link Delta Plus variant as the main driver of the COVID third wave in India. However, it remains a cause of concern. And in the emergency department, we are already, I will just speak about how we are prepared to deal with the COVID third wave. So we have a screening desk running since last 2 years at the emergency department. And any patient who is a COVID-19 suspect, though if the patient is stable, the patient will be shifted to the COVID suspect ward. And if the patient is unstable, like having respiratory distress, breathlessness, and the vitals are unstable, the patient will be admitted in the nearby screening desk. There is a SARI ICU. And in the SARI ICU, we have total bed strength of 16, and all the beds have oxygen and ventilator facility. As of now, we are having 7 ventilators, and if need arises, the ventilators can be increased because all the beds have ventilator facility to deal with any surge of cases. Thank you.
A very good afternoon to all of you. I can't see my own slides. First slide. A very good afternoon, respected Director Ma'am, and seniors, colleagues, and all my doctors and members of the AIIMS Bhubaneswar family. After the first 2 lectures, what I'm speaking about in a very short next 5 minutes is the preparedness of the critical care services at AIIMS Bhubaneswar for the third wave, which is anticipated and which we have just heard from the previous lectures, that if our immunization runs well, probably we will not be facing it. In any case, any preparedness will stem from what has happened to date. And in this slide, we show that even in the last 2 years, the last 2 waves, the COVID ICU has seen a lot of patients, going up to sometimes more than 70 patients each month, as we see over here. This was the May of last 2021. And with these patients also, we had a mortality of 383 patients of a total admission of 735, which is 52% mortality. A number that sounds very big till you see how sick our patients were. We are a tertiary care center, and our SARI ICU sees some of the sickest patients coming with COVID referred from other centers. There is a score called Apache score, which tells you about how sick patients were when they were admitted. And the mean Apache score for the patients admitted to our ICU was 34. To put things into perspective, this is an international scoring. And for an Apache 2 score of 34, the predicted mortality is 64%. So till now, we are lucky to have done well by international standards, and we hope to continue this in the third wave, God forbid, if it comes to us. How are we faced as far as the critical care services are concerned? What is the surge capacity as far as logistics? With the help of the entire AIIMS family, we have increased the ICU beds that are available to our patients from 21 beds in the Ayush in the beginning of the COVID pandemic to the adding of 16 ICU beds in the J wards with ventilator facilities. Then 21 bedded new ICU has been added in the maximum surge we saw during the May, June, July phase in 2021. And we have plans in phase how to increase beds further if needed. There is a very good close communication and fast tracking with the store's procurement and administration that helps us for emergency procurement for all the critical care logistics, the equipment, the drugs, and the other things that are needed at a drop of a hat for these very sick patients. And we hope that's going to continue in the future as well. Imaging facilities with good support from the entire departments of radiology, investigations with pathology, microbiology, availability of high-end equipment with the newest feather in our cap being the ECMO, a very good coordination aided by the control room which has been put up that helps us to be able to know what is happening where, which finally helps to more effective ICU triage so that the patients who deserve the maximum care and who can benefit most from it actually do get that care. And frequent patient status updates that helps us keep a good positive face in front of our patients. Again, these are the plans for the surge capacity. Training from the beginning of this pandemic, repeated training events have occurred, incorporating not only doctors and nurses, attendants, technicians, whoever in the team who will take part in the care for the critically ill patient who is a part of the ICU team has been trained in collaboration with national and international groups for capacity building, and the trainings have been repetitive. And in the center, you see the training for the new first floor ICU that came up, and the photographs for the training of the nursing facilities and the technicians are continuously ongoing. ICU work is a team. Training involves all the team members together. Any surge capacity means there has to be a protocolized role division and teamwork. One team, one department, one type of doctor or a nurse or an attendant cannot get the work done in an ICU. Good communication is important. This WhatsApp screenshot is just to show you how quickly we are there as a team where it is needed. So these ventilators in the wards, when there is a complaint at 10:03 that there is perhaps a non-working ventilator somewhere, by 10:06, our team is there in PP inside taking care of that. All fingers of a palm cannot be the same, but when we work together in this family, we end up having more than 10 fingers. Continuing with role division and teamwork, this second wave, the technicians have joined us in a big way so that now we have teams who daily take care of the equipments and the trolleys in the ICU, which tend to get messy when there is no one specifically looking after them. The senior most technicians and the nursing in charges are now there inside the ICU, helping us doctors take care of the patients, and they give feedback of the maintenance and the continuity of care, which can very well fall apart in a pandemic situation. So the continuity of a system that is set in place is ensured. These teams are also a part of the proning team. We have a team for intubation and a team for transport, along with a wonderful team that's going to look further into infection control. Society of Critical Care Medicine, which is the most looked upon towards during the COVID-19 resources in the critical care sector, has prepared this ICU checklist in as late as 2021 March, I must say. And I'm happy to say that we had ticked most of these boxes even in the first surge. The surge capacity cannot be complete or cannot continue without overwhelming goodwill of our patients. Until now, we have seen many wonderful examples. Two small examples here. In the first photograph, these were people who never got COVID, who were never admitted, but the word of mouth spread in their colony that AIIMS Bhubaneswar COVID ICU services is doing such a good job that they made handmade cakes and they came and gave it to us in the COVID ICU. Goes a long way to show that we are appreciated as a whole, as a family of AIIMS. And the second picture, more humbling, a patient who actually passed away before she did so in the ICU actually told her family to bless the doctors and the team who is taking care of her after her passing away. And this goodwill means a lot to the entire team, and which will help us to see the surge through in the third wave, hoping it's not as bad. It's very important that we don't forget about the non-COVID patients in this scenario. The COVID pandemic will come, will go. Does not mean that non-COVID patients will not come. They will not get critically ill. And you can see some names in this paper from our institute itself. We were worried about these non-COVID patients as far back as the beginning of the first wave. And with that in mind, we have ensured that our non-COVID patients do not suffer from lack of critical care facilities. The same time period, you see that we have seen more patients in the SICU, CICU. This is that data. Other ICUs also had seen same number of patients, but we continue to take care of non-critically ill patients who are as sick as the COVID patients in our non-COVID ICUs. With that, this is just a picture that goes to say that the COVID-19 pandemic will change the future of critical care. Every picture here taken from this journal in 2021 is what we are already doing or striving hard to do to improve our preparedness for the third wave of the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you so much.
A very good afternoon to all. Respected Director, Madam, Dean Sir, Medical Superintendent Sir, our DDA, people from media, and people from outside other reputed institutions. So I welcome all of you to this webinar. Myself, Dr. Saubhagya Kumar Jena, Professor and Head Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology, going to talk regarding our preparedness in labor room services for the third wave. So, outline of my talk will be regarding this in these headings. First, I will touch upon the data of labor room services in first and second wave. Then, a lot of things has been discussed regarding the third wave. Then, our preparedness in relation to infrastructure, human resource, and other important measures, and one or two challenges that we might face, but still we are prepared for to tackle those challenges. So our first case, a case referred from Capital Hospital, who turned positive, was on 3rd July 2020. Then these are the details in first and second wave. In first wave in the year 2020, total number of cases in our department was 93. In second wave till now, it is 1116. That means till 24th August 2021. Then below given the number of procedures we conducted in the first wave and second wave, the almost equal number of procedures in first wave and second wave. The issue here is these are the data of only the positive cases who turn to be positive. And labor room is the emergency of obstetrics and gynec department. Though the name suggests it is labor room, all form of obstetric gynec emergencies, even a woman with heavy bleeding PV or any problem during emergency comes through the labor room. So in second wave, though the positive data is 116, we have seen around 750 cases in our labor room. So I want to brief that we have two labor rooms. One is a COVID negative labor room and another is COVID suspected or positive labor room, which was different in first wave and in different area in first wave, and second wave also it is in different area. And the total number of procedures, though it is here it is indicated 74, we conducted 74 procedures in positive cases. But overall in that area there are 200 cases where different procedures has been done, including cesarean section, vaginal delivery, and other emergency life-saving procedures. Then, unfortunately, we had two deaths, both the deaths in the year 2021. One was a postnatal mother who died on 18th June, and second was a death recently on 22nd August, which is a case admitted in emergency hours, which came from West Bengal. She almost received around 25 to 30 units of blood and blood products. She had other comorbid conditions also, but she was COVID positive. Unfortunately, we lost that patient. Then regarding the possibility of third wave, Dr. Soren has elaborated nicely in this mathematical modeling. But what I want to impress upon that, pregnant women is a vulnerable group for the third wave. We are discussing a lot of things regarding the children less than 18 years of age who are not vaccinated that are vulnerable. But still then, because the Vaccination during pregnancy has just started hardly 1 to 1.5 months back. So pregnant women is a vulnerable group if at all, if the third wave comes also. Then in relation to infrastructure preparedness, this is the COVID labor room. We have changed a modular OT in first floor of our hospital to a COVID labor room and COVID OT. There are patient receiving areas. You can see in this area. This is the patient bed facility area. And this is labor room, COVID labor room, COVID positive, and it is maternity OT. If any patients request any surgery or cesarean section, it is done in this place. Then these are the patient beds with patient inside. This is the working station for our doctors and nursing officers with all type of emergency medicines which is required for care of obstetric and gynec patients available 24/7. Then the value addition here is, you can see the two images. It is given 2021 one. This is a critical ill patient in our first floor COVID room who required ventilation, but unfortunately there was a ventilator was not available. Our residents are doing AMBU actually during that time. So this situation has changed in 2021. We have a dedicated ventilator in our COVID labor room. And I thank the HOD anesthesia who conducted a class for online class for all the department, faculty members, residents, and both PG and senior residents regarding the basics of ventilation. So in case any emergency ventilator services is required, we have a ventilator in our labor room. Then regarding the human resources, yes, I am fortunate that we have a dedicated team member in the department, that is team in the Department of Obstetric Gynecology, starting from faculty members who are on rotation posted in COVID areas. We have dedicated residents actually. This is a photograph in COVID area. You can see they're sincere, dedicated, and committed. You can see this. I speak a lot actually, though it is a hectic duty. They have to be in PP, but still then they are very happy to serve. Then care of the mother during pregnancy, education, and care of the newborn, helping in breastfeeding, all are done by our nursing officers and other residents who are posted in COVID positive areas. But with that facility also, what is most important is vaccination. So vaccine, as Dr. Soren has mentioned, that if 40% are vaccinated also, the third wave peak will come down. So she is a pregnant woman which is having high risk pregnancy, bad obstetric history, referred from Balangir. She is admitted in our hospital. This picture with her consent only. She is taking second dose of COVID vaccination. And till now, this is from Dr. Swayam Pragyan, till August 15th, in our institute, around 33 pregnant women and 32 lactating women has been vaccinated with COVID vaccine. But things apart, after vaccination also, we should not be reluctant, or we should, what I mean is, we should follow the COVID appropriate behavior properly. Then next, yes, we have some challenges in relation to NICU beds. And now the important challenge is critical cases are being referred from outside states, specifically West Bengal. Previously, elective cases or complicated cases are coming, but in odd hours, we are getting now cases from West Bengal. Then referral from private hospital. Our hospital was getting referrals from other hospitals, specifically government hospital. But during the second peak, what we have observed that be it Apollo Hospital, KIMS Hospital, or some hospital, we are getting referrals from those hospitals and other important issues. So at last, what I want to tell is, we fought as a team during the first wave. We are fighting, we don't know till the second wave is going on, and we are ready and we will fight for the third wave, and we are well prepared for the third wave. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon all, respected Director Madam, MS sir, Dean sir, and other calling members, faculty members. I am going to speak about the preparedness of the pediatric COVID, which is much anticipated in the third wave. So as you know, there is an increase in incidence of COVID infection in pediatric in the second wave as compared to the first wave. It is basically because of the increase in the number of cases in the second wave itself. And when you talk about the, though the total number is increased, but when you talk about the percentage, it is almost always less than 12%, and both in the first and as well as in the second wave in less than 20 years of age. So in when you talk about pediatric COVID patients in Odisha, it is almost 84,000 till date, which is around 8% of the total cases. So it is less than the national average. And out of this, only less than 2% children require actually hospitalization. But in the third wave, everybody is anticipating that probably children will be affected more than the others. The reason being probably the schools are going to be open and adults will become vaccinated, and probably will get the way the virus is mutated. Probably he might find the virus might find a new host, and that could be the vulnerable population, which is non-vaccinated. Though there is no scientific evidence as of now, but everybody is anticipating, so they need to prepare for it. So if at all, when the third wave comes with affecting more of children, at the highest of it, what we expecting is it almost 5% children will require hospitalization. For that, we need to be prepared for. So this spectrum of COVID patient in pediatric is like adult, it is mild disease, moderate or severe disease, or the another spectrum is multisystemic inflammatory disease, which is not a MISC. So the mild disease can be treated at home, and if somebody has other illness which is having this mild illness, they can be admitted. Whereas moderate disease and severe disease require hospitalization, and MISC as well as severe disease definitely require a pediatric ICU care. So the plan, the patient flow algorithm for pediatric patient, any suspected patient who comes to our hospital, initially get admitted to the holding area, which is like E1 ward. Then in that ward, we will provide initial care and we'll do a RT-PCR test. If it is negative, we'll shift them to the F1 ward, which is non-COVID ward. If it turn out to be positive, we'll do the triaging. If child is having mild to moderate symptoms, we'll admit in the ward or HDU, depending on the severity. If it is having sick or child with multisystem inflammatory disease with shock, we'll admit to the pediatric COVID ICU. Regarding the beds, so there are 60 designated beds in 2 wards, probably J2 and J3. So where we will keep the neonates as well as children who is requiring admission. And out of that, we have 4 beds in each of this ward, total 8 beds for the HDU, and there are 20 oxygen ports in either both the wards. And there is facility for warmers for the neonates in these wards because they require special care. So regarding equipments, so each of these 2 wards with 60 beds will have equipped with 1 ventilator in the HDU and 2 CPAP machine as well as HFNC, nasal flow thing. And they will have multi-para monitor and pediatric pros measuring the oxygen this thing because they are not equivalent to adults. So measuring this oxygen will be difficult. So pediatric pro, everything has been arranged already. So necessary consumable for pediatric neonate care will be there because preparation of medication, this syrup formulation, everything already been arranged. And if at all there is an increased number of cases beyond 60 and requiring admission, the new ward will be allocated. And parents will be allowed inside these wards to accompany the child because they will require constant parental support for small kids. So for PICU, this COVID PICU, moderate COVID patients with distress, severe COVID patients, and MISC will be admitted. There will be 14 designated COVID PICU beds, 10 will be for the pediatrics, 4 for the neonatal beds, and we'll have 10 ventilators and 4 CPAP machines. And there will be multi-channel monitors and pediatric compatible probes, BP cups, intrathecal BP monitoring facility will be there in all the beds. And there will be a facility for transferring incubator as well as transfer ventilator for mobilizing the sick patient from the ward, suspected ward to the PICU. Regarding the manpower, currently nursing officer working in the pediatric ward will be engaged, pediatric ward as well as ICU will engage in the care of these children. So simultaneously, to strengthen the program, we will train our other nursing officers who are working in the other fields. So in the next week, we are planning it for the training of the nursing officer. And pediatric residents, neonatal residents, and pediatric surgery residents will provide the care for these patients. Faculties, the pediatric faculty, neonatology, along with the pediatric faculty will provide the round-the-clock services for these patients who are admitted. Regarding the drugs and consumables, so steroid, which is one of the common drugs used, we have plenty of it, and one of the costliest medication, which is IVIG, it is we are giving, it is required for the management of MISC cases, and we have enough stock for it. And for last 2 waves, we are giving it free. So probably in the third wave also, we'll support, we have enough stock for this. And some in rare cases, we use tocilizumab, which is there. And regarding the other consumables, we have enough for it. So probably we are able to do so. So though there is no scientific basis of having a third wave, which is predominantly affecting children, but if at all it is there, together we can control it and we will win over the situation. Thank you.
Very good afternoon to all the to Inspector Director Madam and all the members who have joined this webinar. So I'll be discussing about the COVID-19 screening OPD. So far, if we see total number of patients which we have screened in COVID-19 OPD is around 71,000, 72,000, and we have collected around 71,000 sample. So this COVID screening OPD was the first unit to be established as far as COVID-19 services at AIIMS Bhubaneswar is concerned, and it started on 18th March. And we have been running since last 525 days, non-stop every day, Sunday as well as public holidays. And total staff samples which we have collected has been around 12,000 so far. If we see the 2 peaks which we have based on the information which we have from the COVID-19 OPD. So total positive samples which were there was the first peak occurred in September 2020. More or less it was coinciding with the local peak, and the second happened in May 2021. So in the second peak was definitely, it was bigger than the second one. But if you see the total number of staff who reported positive, as compared to the first wave, the total number of staff who reported positive was lesser, though the total number of positive were more in general public. So these were the 2 peaks, and now so we ready for the third week. So as far as screening OPD is concerned, as I have told, we have been running since 525 days. We have done a lot of modifications, lot of changes, and right now we have made the flow of patients very smooth, streamlined, so that we can reduce the waiting time and thus reducing the overall transmission, because most of the patient in the peak time we have seen around 33% to 50% positivity. So that's why it's very important to reduce the waiting time at the OPD and to maintain the social distancing. So for this we have a very streamlined mechanism which starts with OPD registration, and the timing is from 8 AM to 1 PM, and the sample collection starts at around 8:30 AM. So OPD registration, we have named all the counters, and the first counter is registration counter. The second one is consultation for the patients. So recently we have introduced, apart from this tablets which we have introduced keyboard and mouse for speedy entry. So basically we were seeing that this entry of SRF forms was taking a lot of time. So we have introduced this, and that has reduced the entry time drastically. That's thereby reducing the waiting period. Then the third one is VTM labeling counter, where the patient collects their vial transport medium kits. Then the social distancing is maintained, and the sample collection is done at the next counter, following all the infection prevention control measures. So the people who are collecting the samples, they are in full PPE, and we have a HEPA filter which is installed in the sample collection area to take care of the infection. And then the samples are packed in 3 layered as per the recommendation, and then transported to the lab. So it is transported in cold chain boxes. Now report collection, it happens from 8 AM to 4 PM at screening OPD, and we have a separate report counter at the screening OPD itself, so that the patient who are coming for collecting the report need not go to the main hospital building, and that's why thereby mixing with the other patient. And this is how the report is distributed. Apart from the collection of physical report, now the government of Odisha also has an online portal, and the URL is covid19.odisha.gov.in, where you can actually get your COVID-19 report. So if you click this URL and know your COVID test status, put your mobile number, you will be asked for an OTP, which will come to your number. After putting the OTP, you will get this QR code based report, right? So this is another method. Another method is to get the report through SMS. So most of the people who are giving sample, they are getting the report through SMS. So this has been done to reduce the people who are coming to the screening OPD for getting the report. For AIIMS staff, we have created dedicated facility, and for AIIMS staff, we have a separate counter, which is and so the staff who are from AIIMS, they need not stand in the same queue as the general patients are standing, so that the infection can be reduced. And this counter is one-stop counter for all the staff for everything, either for sample collection, for report collection, as well as for getting the drug kit and isolation completion certificate. Apart from that, we also have a 24/7 COVID helpline number for AIIMS staff, which is managed by a faculty member of Department of Community and Family Medicine. So the number is 7655073064, and we have received around 2000 calls on this number so far. Apart from this, though I have not included here because I thought that this is only for AIIMS Bhubaneswar members, but since other people have also joined from outside, we have another number, which is a COVID-19 helpline number for general public, and the number is 82803 46684. I repeat, 82803 46684. So this is the COVID telemedicine number, which is available 24/7 for general public. And we, at the time of peak during May to June, we used to get around 13 to 14 hours of call in a day. So are we ready for third wave? So basically our objective at the screening OPD is to reduce the waiting time and to make sure that the infection is controlled at that place, because that is a very high risk zone. So in second wave, the maximum number of sample we have collected in a day has been 376, and we have capacity to increase that number in the same scenario to more than 500 to 600 by doing some changes which we can do over there. So reduction in waiting time by sample collection, fast sample collection, and deploying multiple teams if required, and doing the SRF entry using keyboard and mouse so that the tablet entry is fastened. Infection control, as we have seen, we are using recommended PPE, proper donning and doffing. So we are ready for the third wave as far as COVID OPD is concerned, because we can increase our capacity to more numbers if required. Thank you very much. So in COVID OPD, which is coordinated by the Department of Community Medicine, is also supplemented by other departments like forensic medicine, biochemistry, ENT, pathology, physiology, pharmacology, and nursing department and security. So I thank all the departments on behalf of the Department of Community Medicine for their support in the COVID-19 OPD services. Thank you.
Very good afternoon, respected Director Madam, MS Sir, Dean Sir, Jawahar Sir, all faculty members and all the attendees here. So I'll be telling about the COVID-19 vaccination center description regarding COVID-19 preparedness. So this will be the outline. The world's largest vaccination drive started on 16th of Jan. This was meant for the healthcare workers only. Later on, in phased manner, all the various beneficiary groups were added, and the last entrant were pregnant women and lactating mothers on 19th of July. 1 week before the vaccination drive, we received guidelines, vaccines and logistics. We got the training regarding COVID app. We prepared our team and we initiated. Afterwards, we also worked towards developing vaccine confidence. Coming to the vaccination status of healthcare workers in AIIMS Bhubaneswar, we have given around total 4,914 are the number of healthcare workers present in the AIIMS Bhubaneswar, and 95% have taken the first dose and 86% have taken second dose. This is the category wise vaccination status, and we are going to complete all of them very soon. This is the Covaxin vaccination status of citizens, and we can see here the maximum beneficiary groups are basically 18 to 44 years, and of course other groups have been covered as well. Coming to the pregnant women and lactating mothers, and when the vaccination started on 19th of July, we have covered, given 42 pregnant women and around 56 lactating mothers COVID-19 vaccination, that is Covaxin. And out of them, around 30 pregnant women and lactating mothers, we have done first follow-up. That is, follow-up has to be done every 10 days interval. This is the status. Out of the pregnant women and lactating mothers whom we have given vaccination, around 14 to 21% are our healthcare workers of AIIMS Bhubaneswar. We have also given the vaccination to the near and dear members, family members of our staff. This started from 3rd of May, and it is around approximately within 18 to 44 year age group, 654 number of family members, as well as more than 45 years, it is around 3,000 plus family members have been vaccinated. Coming to the adverse events following immunization, we have till now got the report of around 364 adverse events. 347 were from healthcare workers, and that is 96% report came from the healthcare workers. Coming to the whether it is minor or severe, most of them are minor, that is 96%. If we go for the male and female comparison, it is around 56% of AFI received from male persons. Commonest complaint received was pain at the injection site, fever, malaise, head drilling, headache, etc. Severe complaint received as such like fever with chill, swelling of left leg, and then symptoms like headache, myalgia persisting for more than 7 days, severe pain at the area where vaccination has been given, urticaria, severe migraine, etc. Coming to the Vaxometer, if you see, India has given 58 crore vaccination and Odisha has given 20 million vaccination. If you see here, the percentage of vaccination in India around as of August 22nd, 2 doses have been completed by 14% of population, and 1 dose has been received by 48% of population. Odisha has the similar picture. 15% of population has received 2 doses and 50% has received 1 dose. This is the picture of Khordha and BMC. Of course, this is AIIMS Bhubaneswar picture, but this is not in millions, this is in thousands. 64,445 number of doses we have given. Yesterday we have given 266 number. First dose we have given 32,000 plus, and second dose given 31,000. So as I have calculated, out of the total BMC beneficiaries under BMC, the citizens we have given 3% of citizens have been vaccinated by AIIMS Bhubaneswar, and around 11% of healthcare workers have been given vaccine by AIIMS Bhubaneswar. How we have prepared for the pandemic? We have given vaccine, we have taken care of all, in fact, elderly, disabled, blind patients of AIIMS Bhubaneswar, those who are having difficulty in using mobile and other app, they have been taken care of by our dedicated team. So the persons who have been vaccinated, they have been given the telemedicine number so that in case of any AEFI or adverse event post-vaccination, they can contact us. Training is being conducted regularly in CoWIN app as well as adverse event following immunization management, and our team as well as our kits are ready for tackling any problem. Coming to the updates here, Cadila Healthcare receives the emergency use authorization from DCGI for ZyCoV-D. The efficacy is 66% and 3 doses has to be given. It has to be given intradermally, and this is the world's first plasmid DNA vaccination. As well as our NTAGI also has approved ZyCoV-D for the 12 to 17 years age group. And National Institute of Disaster Management also advised for vaccination of children basically with comorbidities and disability, because third wave is imminent. And as usual, this is the recent news by Dr. S. Soumya Swaminathan, Chief Scientist, WHO, who said COVID is near endemic stage. In update section, the CoWIN app is being updated repeatedly. And what are the new things we can see here? If you go to the CoWIN app, you will see COVID vaccination services, platforms, resources, and support. If you go to the platforms, you will get all these things here. Verify certificate is one option where, and also vaccination statistics is one option. Vaccination statistics can be used by us. Verify certificates, all these things can be used by people, general people also. If you go to the vaccination statistics, this is the statistics we can see everywhere. These are the 4 centers of AIIMS Bhubaneswar. This is one is meant for 18 to 44 years, and then second one is meant for 45 years plus. And here there are 2 things. One is slot, those who have taken slot, and those who are walking variety. So these are the things. So in the new thing has been updated. This is the correction in my certificate. One can correct the certificate. One can merge multiple doses. Like if one dose has been given in one phone number, other given in second phone number, it can be corrected. Passport can be added for the international travelers. Report unknown number. If anybody else number vaccine certificate is coming to your number, then it can be deleted also. And these are the various things can be done by a person himself. These are the wonderful pictures from our immunization clinic. And of course, thank you very much.
Very good afternoon to all of you, respected Director Ma'am, faculties and friends. Today I'll be briefing you about the COVID-19 testing service at AIIMS Bhubaneswar. As we all know that the diagnosis of COVID-19 is confirmed, the clinical diagnosis is confirmed by 2 main methods. One is the RT-PCR, the other one is the antigen. That is in other way, it is also called as the rapid antigen test. So RT-PCR and antigen test are the 2 tests which are used for COVID-19 testing. Coming first to the COVID-19 RT-PCR, here you can see the lab workflow for RT-PCR. After we receive the sample goes for the processing, followed by the RNA extraction, RT-PCR, and result and reporting.
Now, this is the sample processing occurs in the BSL-2 lab, where the sample is actually made from infectious to it is made non-infectious. And as it is a batch test, the sample processing on an average, it takes around 2 hours. Then after the sample is processed or made non-infectious, the nucleic acid extraction follows. That is again in the biosafety level 2 lab. Then all the reagents of the RT-PCR are mixed and distributed to respective samples, which again takes around on an average, it takes 1 hour. And followed this, then the sample goes along with all the reagents to the RT-PCR machine. And once it goes to the RT-PCR machine, it takes 2 hours. So overall, the entire process takes 4 to 6 hours. And that again depends on the number of samples put in one batch. And after the results are ready, then the results are entered in the ICMR portal and reports are prepared. And that is by exporting from the ICMR portal, the reports are prepared. And that again takes around minimum 1 to 1.5 hours. So this is, as this is a batch test, the entire process takes long time. And so RT-PCR testing is actually focused at our institute, because this is the most reliable test. This is the gold standard of COVID-19 testing. And every day we test around 500 to 600 samples per day. And these samples are tested in several batches. Each batch, as I told, each batch takes 5 to 6 hours, depending on the number of samples. And here at AIIMS Bhubaneswar, we test samples which are collected from the AIIMS patients and also from the samples which are sent by the state government from various districts. So all those samples are tested in the lab. And so far we have tested near 1.7 lakhs sample since we have started the COVID-19 testing from 22nd of March 2020. So this COVID testing in emergency cases also we give the service in patients with severe respiratory infection like SARI cases, and to diagnose whether COVID or non-COVID cases where rapid testing is required. And also in patients who will undergo emergency invasive procedure. So for this type of patients, a rapid tests diagnostic service is given in form of rapid antigen test. And wherever this antigen test comes negative, then we go for a rapid RT-PCR test. So that is given by the GeneXpert COVID Express test. So rapid antigen test takes around 15 to 30 minutes average. And whereas the rapid RT-PCR, that is by GeneXpert COVID-19, it takes a single sample can be tested by this method. And here at a time, 4 samples can be tested. And each sample test takes around 1.5 hours. So overall, the COVID-19 testing service at AIIMS Bhubaneswar is available both for suspected COVID-19 cases, the pre-operative cases prior to hospital admission, and pre-invasive procedure cases. So both for emergency cases and non-emergency cases. And available test types are RT-PCR, rapid RT-PCR, which is given as GeneXpert COVID Express or CBNAT, and point of care rapid antigen test, which is done bedside. And besides the testing part itself in the AIIMS Bhubaneswar, we also have played a major role in enhancing or augmenting the testing capacity of Odisha's different laboratories. As AIIMS Bhubaneswar has been designated as a mentor institute for Odisha state as well as for West Bengal. And here we assess their laboratory infrastructure, we train their staff, we assess their laboratory designing suitability for RT-PCR, biosafety facility, and we also give them guidance in testing. And so far, 11 medical colleges of Odisha have been approved by AIIMS Bhubaneswar, and many others are in pipeline. And also like 24 medical colleges of West Bengal. So total 35 institutes or laboratories have been approved by AIIMS Bhubaneswar for their COVID-19 RT-PCR testing. Thank you.
Good evening. Good evening, respected Director Madam, all our respected seniors, my colleagues and juniors. So I am Dr. Sudipta Ranjan Singh. I am briefly presenting about the procurement part, that is equipment, consumables, drugs, planning for procurement. Planning for procurement, it's a huge thing. Like all other strategic planning, it has different aspects, like first we set objectives, generate strategies, and generate alternate strategies, and implement it and evaluate it. So if I can say briefly, the procurement, it's not a story, rather it's a saga of things we have to do for procurement because of different limitations. And we have, I'll say that what are the limitations. In the month of January 27, 2020, the first case were reported in India. And in the 16th March 2020, the first case was reported in Odisha. And within after 3 days, the first case was admitted at AIIMS Bhubaneswar. So we had a golden period of nearly 2 months between the first case that happened in the last last week of January, and between the mid-March when the first case was admitted over here. So this was just like a bolt from the blue because there was a lot of uncertainty at that particular point. We didn't know what will be the amplitude, how many patients will be affected, what will be the necessities for treating these patients. And simultaneously, we observed that there was a surge of demand of very common hospital items, hospital requirements. There was scarcity, which resulted in scarcity. There was, in addition to it, there was transport issues and manpower issues in the factories. And the most important thing was the prices was quite unstable because of surging demand. So all these things led to the failure of our supply chain, but we quickly get into control and start redressing all these activities. So one particular thing was that we have to take very quick decision making, and emergency procurements we have started. Then there are two important things for the hospital support, that is the drugs and disposable. We quickly finalize the rate contracts for this drugs and disposable. And yes, we always on this process, we have a plan B, not plan B, I can say sometimes plan C and plan D also. Because of all this uncertainty and unreliability in the market, we had exhausted all our procurement modalities as per the Government of India rules and regulations. We have started local procurement. We have started procuring by emergency basis. Simultaneously, on the long-term target also, we have floated tenders and try to redress, try to opt all the mechanism available with us. This thing would have been, very difficult if we would not have got the supports from the various government agencies. Like, of course, we have got huge help from the Government of India, as well as the state government also, as and when required, have supported us immensely to float through this second wave. Yes, coming to the COVID procurement, the list is quite long, but the numbers will speak a volume. The total equipment we have procured this COVID is nearly 3 crore 30 lakhs rupees, and the consumables, on the consumables we have spent more than 21 crore rupees. This comes together nearly 24 crore 41 lakh rupees spending on the equipments and consumables. And this data also excludes the procurement through HLL and GEM. If I add together the HLL and GEM with this number, then it will definitely going beyond 30 crores of procurement during this COVID pandemic. The major equipments that we have added to our services is the ventilators. Previously, now we have total 179 ventilators, high-end ventilator and transport ventilator, all inclusive. And out of this, before the COVID era, we had only 74 ventilators, and we have added 105 ventilators during this period. Along with that, dialysis machines with portable arrow, 3 numbers we have added, neonatal ventilator we have added, neonatal incubator, digital radiograph, and of course the ECMO machine, ABG machine, patient isolation system. Then this for the testing also DNA and RNA extractors, USG machines, bronchoscopes, mortuary cabinet, and many more items we have added. The list will be very long to cite in this presentation. Yes, coming to the third wave. Third wave, as you know, our focus on the pediatric age group. We are adding new neonatal ventilator. The procurement procedure is already on, and neonatal ventilator, we are adding few more neonatal ventilator. Radiant warmer we are going to add, and along with that, for the imaging services, we are adding 3 more portable digital radiograph system, which is quite compact and can have a bedside imaging. That thing is in the last phase of procurement. This will definitely going to help in our procurement. Regarding the drugs and consumables, we have already done our rate contracts for different drugs and consumables, so that has been finalized. Coming, keeping in view of the requirement of the third of, as you have said, that immunoglobulins, IVIG is the target thing. Now we have already sufficient numbers in stock, and also we have set all the procedures expecting the third wave, and already orders also have been placed for further adding to our stock. The next important thing was the liposomal amphotericin B. In the past COVID wave, it was, almost nobody was requiring this liposomal amphotericin B, but during the second wave, we, required this liposomal amphotericin B like anything. So say that we have spent almost more than 1.15 crore in procurement of this liposomal amphotericin B, and already there is another procurement plan of nearly 1 crore rupees for this amphotericin B, which is also going to help in the third wave. You can see every day and other we are placing orders, and this is not only placing orders, we are also receiving huge consignments. Our pharmacy is almost ready with all the necessities that is required for management of third wave. And this is, you can see the disposal, every day we dispose of such amount of drugs to the various, this is the present and thing. So we are disposing different items to the various departments, and they are being used. From the procurement point of view, we are all prepared, and we have already planned our procurement, or purchase orders have already been placed, anticipating the various drugs. And the first wave as well as the second wave have honed our efficiency. We could better understand this pandemic, and accordingly we have prepared. Many purchase orders have been placed in the within the next few weeks. Say 1 to 2 weeks, we will expecting that we'll get rest of the drugs. And yes, we are definitely prepared for the third wave. Thank you.
Very good evening to respected Director Madam and others. I'm here to presenting how much our nursing service is ready to handle if third wave comes. We Department of Nursing Service tried our best to manage second wave from the learnings of first wave. We ready to manage the third wave from the learnings of first and the second wave. In the initial stage of first wave, we had 837 nursing officers, but now we have 1216 nursing officers. So in terms of manpower, we ready to handle the situation. In first wave, we had a great challenge to manage COVID ICU patients because of limited trained nursing manpower. During the second wave, we have tried all the ways to increase the critical care nursing manpower. We also opened 4 HDU beds in each COVID wards, which help nursing officers to learn how to take care of critically COVID patients. With the great leadership and sustained motivation of our esteemed Director, Madam, 86% of nursing officers have completed both the doses of vaccine, whereas 88% of nursing officers completed the first dose and awaiting for the second dose. Among remaining 6.7, few are newly joined and few are exempted and yet to complete the vaccination. In the initial stage of first wave, we have posted full PPE and partial PPE nursing officers together to take care of COVID patients because of the strategy. Later, only full PPE nursing officers were allowed to enter the COVID units. But now we made dedicated communication and coordination area for COVID ICUs and the SARI, which is successfully running and now working on to implement same model in COVID wards too. In second wave, we have started daily updating the patient's health status in the website, whereas by entering this CR number and phone number, family member can know the health status of the patients. In upcoming days, this will be further strengthened in the third wave. From the month of May, we started telenursing services for COVID and non-COVID patients. We are getting good response on this. Total 990 communications were done in last 3 months for various nursing care related assistants. Most of the incoming calls were non-COVID related, and we also collecting feedback about the service. I mean the telenursing service. We'll upgrade ourselves. Approximately 7,000 phone calls were made, and 2,712 people received and expressed they were satisfied about this unique service. And the second part, what I'm talking was only for COVID patients. Shipping of COVID patients was a great challenge for the initial days. After starting the transportation call center, it's running 24/7. The patients were triaged according to their health status. The waiting period was drastically reduced, and same strategy will be carried forward for the future also. Collaborating with different stakeholders, we have done a number of virtual platform training program, including 2 pediatric care for AIIMS Bhubaneswar nurses as well as nurses all over the Odisha. 3,000 nurses were benefited through our webinar, and it will be continued for future also. To strengthen our nursing manpower, we have started with hands-on training for our nursing officers. We started how to use PPE. Almost all the nurses and other few healthcare workers also been covered. Adding to existing ICU nurses, 45 nursing officers formally trained for taking care of COVID critically ill patients, and 330 nursing officers were trained for handling crash cart in any emergency situations, and all the newly joined nursing officers been given induction training program, which includes care of COVID patients. Thank you.
So with this, we have finished up the various talks. So before we open the for the question answer session, I would request our medical superintendent, Dr. Sachidananda Mohanty, to address. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Jawahar. Good evening to all of you, Madam Director, DDA, Dean, my dear colleagues, and the stakeholders from outside. Actually, there is nothing for me to say because all the things it has been covered by my colleagues. They have done it wonderful. Every presentation was nice, starting from overview by Dr. Jawahar to the nursing services by Dr. Mahalingam. All did their play well. So So the question is, are we prepared for this third wave? In one word, I would say yes. But many a times I think whether this third wave will come or not. That is the most difficult question to answer. So if you remember, there was a study by Kanpur IIT. They said that the third wave will come maybe in the month of September or October. But almost we are into the month of September. Some say the third wave has already merged with the second wave. If you see in that sense, or if you see that a third wave is coming, in either of the case, then the number of cases, whatever is expected, is not going up. So this is definitely a positive sign, not only for AIIMS, but also for the whole country. The reason for this, the third wave, they say it will affect mostly the children. Children, I mean, it is less than 18 years. It is because of lack of vaccination to the children, and because we do not have a robust healthcare system for management of children. Maybe these are the two reasons why people are much more worried about the upcoming third wave. On this, the National Institute of Disaster Management, someone was telling this twice also, and they warned that any point of time, maybe next month or in the month of October, it will come. If someone was asked, maybe Alexander, he was asked, why, your almost all the decisions are right. He said that is because of my bad decisions in the past. So if you go back to the past, we had experienced first wave. Subsequently, we have experienced second wave. And we have learned many things. We became much more finally second wave than in first wave. Hopefully, if at all third wave will come, it will be, will be much more final even than the second wave. As you know, we are running a hospital of around 1,000 beds. We are forgetting that it's a hospital catering to the needs of COVID and non-COVID cases. Yes, of course, COVID is a pandemic. We are giving importance, but we should not forget that people are dying more even from non-COVID cases. And that is the challenge we are facing as hospital administrators. How to cater to the needs of non-COVID cases. And for that, if you remember, we have never stopped our get to non-COVID cases as well. We are providing care to both non-COVID and COVID cases. The outcome is excellent. All the stakeholders, starting from the director to down below, all departmental heads, all COVID working group members, they are, working hard 24/7. And maybe that is the reason why we see fruits nowadays. We are doing an excellent job. And hopefully in the third wave also, we will sail through very well because of our experience, whatever we have gained from the first and second. So let us hope that as you know, everybody has said that we are prepared. And it is a teamwork. All the team members, they are doing excellent work. As because we are sailing as a team, hopefully we'll do well also in the third wave. So with this, I conclude my speech. Let us go for a discussion on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Now, there are a couple of questions that have already come in the chat box and also through the WhatsApp. So I would request some of our experts to answer. First is about Dr. Swagata. Can you just speak briefly about this ECMO facility? What is ECMO and how is it useful? Whether all patients require ECMO, and how are we prepared? That is one question. Can you just take it up?
Sir, I think you asked 3 questions on that. What is an ECMO? So an ECMO is simply a machine which will draw out the blood from the patient's body, take it into a filter, in simple language I'm saying, which will add oxygen to that blood, remove the carbon dioxide and put it back into the body. So just like a dialysis machine will do the work of a kidney during hemodialysis, an ECMO machine will do the work of the lungs as far as we're talking about ECMO for COVID patients. We will stay there. There are different types of ECMO. So in context of ECMO, a context of COVID, an ECMO machine will act as a lungs. The second question was, do all patients benefit from it? The answer is simple, that the choice of which patient, COVID patient, will benefit from ECMO is very complicated because, like I said, taking the blood out of the body and putting it back has a lot of very severe complications. And just like sometimes once you start hemodialysis, a patient may be hooked on it for very long. And once a patient goes on ECMO machine, COVID patient, it may take a long time for the patient to come out. So how to choose a patient for ECMO is a big thing, which only experts can do. And finally, sir, I think the question was how we are prepared for ECMO. So as of now, we have the machines, we have teams ready, and we also have our SOPs and policies and price list in place for how to start giving ECMO once a patient is selected to be able to benefit from ECMO. I think that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you.
so much.
Thank you. So the next question is about the trend of patients. At AIIMS Bhubaneswar, how is the trend? So I have actually put up a slide in the first slide which said that the numbers are coming down. So we have already, the second wave peak has gone and the numbers have certainly come down. So we have around 40 patients, less than 40 patients in the ward and around 15 patients in the ICU. So that is a present status. So the third question which is reflected is about the non-COVID care. How are we prepared for the non-COVID care during the third wave? MS sir, could you just speak about it?
Yes. If you remember, I have told in my address, we are giving more importance to the non-COVID cases also. We have opened up all the wards excepting 2. We have opened all OPDs also. We have started functioning all 25 modular OTs also. So almost all the work at AIIMS has started, bearing few areas which has been, named after the COVID. So we are on into the non-COVID cases now, full cases. I mean, we have started all the sections, starting from registration, OPD, IPD, OT, and admission. All the cares, whatever is needed for the non-COVID, patients, we have started all now. And the COVID, of course, is less. It is confined to 2 wards now. Thank you.
So we have around 300 odd beds are dedicated for the COVID as of now. So depending on the next, in case we expect a third wave, we will plan accordingly. So if there are any other questions from any participants, you can ask now.
Good evening, sir. This is Prabhas. Hello.
Yeah, Prabhas.
Yeah. Good evening. Good evening, madam. Good evening, MS sir. Respected all faculties. So there is a question from media. 2 questions were there. I think 4 or 5 people also joined. There are some interruptions. They left. One question was there, and already Jawahar sir has addressed that. That is the trend of hospitalization of COVID patients in your hospitals. I think that was from Times of India. Sir has given the data, like what is the patient numbers in ward, ICU and all. There is another question from Nakshatra News. regarding the ECMO services. His question is how to provide ECMO treatment to all needy and poor. And whereas state government always said that for this machine trained human resource is not there. If machine is there, there is no trained manpower. I think we have trained, and on this any expert can say a few words. I think it will be nice.
I think Dr. Swagata has already addressed this question. So
Yeah.
we have trained manpower. We also have the ECMO facility. So in case we select any patient, so we will be ready to give the ECMO facility.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? There is one question regarding this COVID vaccination below 5-year children. So Dr. Swayam Pragya, can you just please?
As far as the government policy is concerned, we are going to give only people beyond 18 years, and 2 vaccines has been given emergency use authorization. One is Zycov-D, and the other one, Covaxin, is going under clinical trial phase. So as soon as it is the vaccine production keeps on going up, then the 12 to 17 years children will be vaccinated first, and that too on priority basis. Those who are having comorbidities as well as disability, they will be given vaccination first, and thereafter the others will be given. So it will be definitely in a phased manner, not to start with 5 years plus, but to start with who needs most, that is 12 years plus. Thank you.
So are there any other questions from any one of our colleagues or participants? There is a comment by Dr. Vinay. So he says that the WHO has said that this it could be an endemic. So what could be its effect with respect to third wave? So can Dr. Saurin, can you just talk on this?
So that is still speculation, and everybody is discussing on that. Everyone is based on assumptions now. So as per the literature, who have done some mathematical model-based calculations, so it's definitely going to happen, but on a lesser scale. That is what the literature is saying. So we have. So I will go by that only. So I don't know. The endemic phase is, of course, that will come. That is also inevitable. That will. I think over the next couple of years, it will go in the endemic phase. But now the third wave is inevitable, and it will probably come in a lesser scale than the second wave.
So now I would request our Honorable Director, Dr. Gitanjali Madam, to conclude the program by her address. Welcome, Madam.
Thank you. Professor Jawahar, Professor Mohanty, all the faculty members who have joined, members of the media, members of civic society who have joined us, ladies and gentlemen. I think we can proudly say that AIIMS Bhubaneswar has worked very hard and is ready for the third wave. We do hope, like everyone, we hope and pray that this wave will not come, especially that it will not affect the children or the younger age groups, even a little bit. But having said that, we have to go by what the experts tell us, and we need to be ready for it. And today's webinar is one of the ways in which we can assure ourselves as well as the public that we are indeed ready for a third wave when it comes. This is not something which has been done by one person. As you can see, teams have worked in unison for a long time. Some of the teams have not even had it off. You know, they have been working continuously without grumbling, without any, asking for any kind of, facilities. They have just taken what we have thrown at them and they have worked very hard. I am indeed extremely proud of all the hard work which has gone in. Every team had a leader, somebody called themselves a leader, and they all worked together. We all worked together. What many of you may not know is that initial stages of the second wave, I used to take daily review meetings on, initially we used to meet offline, then because it became too dangerous, we were meeting totally online meetings every day, every single day, whether it was a closed holiday, Saturday, Sunday, we were meeting and I used to take a review and we were making decisions on a daily basis. This has perhaps helped us to come to grips with a lot of things. A lot of small things got addressed. I'm not saying everything got addressed, but many things did get addressed. And that is what I will call the success of this team. As you can see, it is not just one person. It is not just the doctors who are working, but the nurses, the housekeeping staff, the technicians, the data entry operators, the people who are doing the registrations, the security. So this is a huge amount of work. And to get this whole hospital working together and also be prepared. So it has taken a lot of hard work, a lot of, what shall I say, going back and forth, sometimes having to change some things which we have done, but we are ready. Now I can put my face up and shout from the rooftop saying, yes, we are ready. Okay. Does this mean that we will be in a position to meet 100% of whatever is being thrown at us? No. But I can say that we have sincerely, diligently, carefully planned every future step of whatever wave is going to come. And I'm really hoping it will not come, but if it comes, we are ready. And that includes a lot of planning about consumables, about, the kind of medicines we will need, the kind of equipment we will need. And there are a lot of questions about ECMO. So if there is a patient who is fit for ECMO and we need to put this patient on ECMO, even if he's poor, we have made plans. So it doesn't matter whether somebody is rich or poor, but if somebody needs ECMO, we are ready. We have the trained faculty. We have faculty who have been more than adequately trained, I would say. And we have a team of faculty members who are trained. We have a team of technicians, these perfusionists who have been hired for this particular purpose. We have nurses and we have the space and consumables and everything. So we are ready. But however, we need not look at only the high-end kind of treatment. As our MS was saying, we also need to look at large number of patients have not received simple care which they need. No, it may be in terms of cancer care, their cardiac causes or some endocrinology causes or even simple medical care. They have not been able to reach, some have not been able to travel for various reasons. And we are ready for that too. So now it is a question of all of us working for longer, harder hours till we are able to provide and that gap which has appeared because we were not able to provide non-COVID care, we need to slowly start, filling up that gap so that these patients who are in need of care will be treated and they will be satisfied with the care they are receiving. So to sum up, I would like to say that I am extremely pleased with today's webinar. Everybody's kept to time. Everyone focused on the topic that was given, thereby all the people listening. And I wish there were more people listening, but whatever, whoever was listening would understand that we have addressed this issue in the various aspects which needed to be addressed. And therefore, big thank you to the Department of Hospital Administration, Dr. Jawahar, for putting together this team and each and every presenter for taking time, preparing slides and presenting today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, madam. Let us thank the director, madam, MS, DDA, Dean, the faculty, and all the speakers, and all the participants who have participated in this webinar. Thank you for attending. Let us conclude by a message that let us expect that there is no third wave. In case there is a third wave, we are ready to face it. At the very same time, we would appeal to all of you to vaccinate, encourage vaccination, and also to follow COVID appropriate behavior. Thank you, one and all.